it's cool. It was I don't regret anything, and I don't regret NYU certainly. I wish I don't know. I guess like just because I'm like, middle aged now. I wish I had like known more and taken advantage of some of the opportunities, but I didn't know to, and that's fine. It like took me a while longer till I kind of just wanted to make my own path. So, but that happened, and it was difficult because I was not rich, and I was there with a lot of
I would
kids who
imagine, yeah.
were who were basically making these short films, and then they would come into Sight and Sound and show these short films. I was like, how the fuck did they get all those people? How much did this fucking cost? And it's like
Yeah.
it's because they called their dad, and it's like, oh, here's 20 grand for a short film, and I'm just
Like,
like
this isn't
meanwhile,
fair.
yeah, well, I mean, it's not even about fair. It's just like, wow, I have two people in a room, and it was a stretch for me to get pizza for everybody. But it's like, okay, it's like, that's one of the reasons why I kind of studied producing at NYU and not directing. I just couldn't afford it.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So but you made short films in school, I'd
Oh
imagine,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. You had to. I mean, and it was lovely. And my first short film went around the festivals. It was a few years after NYU, but I did it with other NYU students. Um, and that it was called Fairy Tale, and it was a half hour long, which is not something you should do for your first short film, and I didn't know that. But I put it on credit cards, and I was making very little money, but I was managing to pay the credit card minimums every month at least. And I'm really proud of it. I mean, it went to like I don't know, a couple dozen festivals, mostly LGBT festivals. It was basically a coming out story. And I feel like almost every gay filmmaker has to make a coming out story at some point. So I got that out of the way first. And then I made another short in 2002, which was very successful, and it went everywhere. It's called Target Audience. It went to Berlin and a lot of other places. And then I basically spent a lot of years paying the bills and doing marketing and doing trailers and promos and short form and working with networks and that was a real it's funny because I mean it did pay the bills and it was lovely and but it, to learn editing uh to really get good at editing, especially short form editing, is uh it takes a lot, and it takes a lot of years, and I think that I don't feel like Boorman and the Devil would be the film it is had I not had those years of training short form. Because Boorman and the Devil, and you've seen it, um, it has a pace to it. It's a very fast moving and very kind of dense
That's what I really
documentary,
honestly.
and that all comes from me learning how to tell a story in 30 seconds over and over and over and over and over again. So when I first did the rough cut, it was very, very long. It was 196 minutes. The first rough assembly. It wasn't really a rough cut. It was a rough assembly, and it included all of the stories that everybody had about this movie, and there were a lot of stories. And I showed it to a few friends, and it was shocking because I expected people like, not everyone's like an obsessive like me about this film or John Boorman. And nobody, like literally nobody, because we gave them forms. Like, were you ever bored? Zero said they were bored, which blew my mind. I'm like, how did I like they were with it for 196 minutes? Like, okay. But it was like kind of being at a restaurant and getting like five entrees. It was just too much for a single viewing. It didn't work. And so it took about 2 years for me to get that 196-minute rough assembly to the cut it's at right now, which is under 2 hours. And I don't think I look back on it and it's been really, really like by far the hardest thing I've ever done. Because you would reduce stuff, you would take stuff out, you would put stuff back in. We tested it so many times with various groups of people. Um, I had my friends broken out into groups, like, because I wanted to keep them fresh and like have the new people see this and new people see this cut. And uh yeah, it took a really long time to get to a point where the thing told the story eloquently and moved and flowed, and I had to like listen to a lot of very bad notes, like a lot of notes. There were a lot of people who really mean well who were just like, oh no, you have to cut out all the new Hollywood stuff, that's not part of the story. And I'm like, yes it is. Oh, you have to cut out all of the John Boorman stuff because it's really about Exorcist 2. No, it's not. It's about John Boorman and Exorcist. Oh, you have to cut out all the production stuff for Exorcist 2. No, that's all important. So getting it all to work as a cohesive whole, telling this story, which is about Exorcist 2, but also kind of not about Exorcist 2. It's about filmmaking, and it's about an artist trying something incredibly difficult and incredibly heartfelt and technically insanely like challenging, and and what happens and how he survives it, and how he survives the rejection of his work, the horrible, like demonizing, no pun intended, rejection of his work. Um, I don't know any other director, certainly no great director, and I put John Boorman in the great director pantheon any day, um, who has ever. And I could be wrong. Somebody could bring something up that I'm just not aware of or not thinking about right now. But I don't know any other director who had to deal with that level of public repudiation for a work as John
No, I mean,
Boorman did.
sorry to interrupt,
No, no,
but
go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm going
I,
on.
no, you
I've
should,
had my
because this is
coffee this
awesome.
morning. It's the
Dude,
morning.
you went through like four questions that I had anyway, so no, because I was just gonna say,
Feel free
like,
to re-ask them. I can answer them in other ways.
I obviously love The Exorcist. I mean, everyone loves The Exorcist, and I really like Exorcist 3.
Hmm.
And I have never seen Exorcist 2.
Oh.
And I've gone through however long, whatever, 15 years, say, consciously not watching it because
Hmm.
there is that thing where everyone says it's terrible. Everyone
Yeah.
says don't watch it.
Yeah.
It ruins the first one. It ruins the first one, and it's not as good as the third one. Just skip it.
Yeah.
Um, and so going into this movie, it was I think, an interesting perspective as someone who I think, like most people, either has not seen it or saw it and didn't like it.
That was a
Um,
challenge when we were putting it together, honestly. Like, and I'll get back to whatever you're going to ask, but like
no,
literally
you're
we had
good.
to be very, very cognizant of the fact that most of the people who were seeing this film will not have seen Exorcist 2. And in fact, it's funny, the people, because that was one of the things on our tests when we would test people, like, have you seen Exorcist 2? The people who didn't see Exorcist 2, um, were even more enthusiastic than the people who did. And when we're playing at Beyond Fest out here for our North American premiere next week, they're running it as a double feature with Exorcist 2, and they're running our movie first. And I honestly believe that you will get more out of Exorcist 2 by watching our documentary first and then watching Exorcist 2. Because I mean, did you watch it since our documentary? Have you seen it yet?
No, I've seen the documentary twice,
Oh,
and I have
yeah.
not seen Exorcist. I was going back and forth. I was like, do I watch it before the interview or not? And I
No, you
decided
do.
not to
Yeah.
because I wanted to have the same kind of perspective I had when I watched the movie, your
You,
movie.
I would be very, listen, when you watch it, you should drop me an email. I would be very interested in hearing what you think of it, especially
I would
being an
love to.
Exorcist fan and having seen like Boorman and the Devil twice. Because I feel like I've been really fair to that film. It's funny. There's a bit at the end of Boorman and the Devil, as you know, that says like, when I basically ask the question, I break the fourth wall and ask the question, is Exorcist 2 a good movie? And
It's like
it's,
half and half,
I
if
mean,
that.
but here's the
Yeah,
thing. I feel like there are two ways to view a movie, really any work of art, but let's just call it a movie. Let's just say there are two ways to view a movie. One is it good? In other words, does it achieve what it sets out to do effectively? Like and it doesn't work within its own rules and constructs. I think that even John Boorman would say that Exorcist 2 is a flawed work in this regard. Conventionally, I have a very hard time calling it a good movie, but the other way to look at a movie, and the way that I find I think is more important, at least to me now in my life, is it an interesting work? Is it Does it try stuff that maybe you haven't seen before? Does it try to subvert your expectations? Does it try to do things that other movies don't try to do? Is it not just some placid, you know, trip that you're on to tune out your brain and just escape? Is it something that you're actively cogitating on while you're watching it? And to me, that's more important than whether or not it just conventionally works. I would take one Exorcist 2 over like 50 perfectly fine, good, effective, like kind of B plus movies any day of the week. And Exorcist 2 like is I think undeniably, I would debate anybody who doesn't think it's an interesting movie. I think it's one of the most interesting movies I've ever seen, simply because, not just because of what it is and movie itself, but like the fact that they chose to do that at that time in Hollywood. They had the sequel to the biggest grossing movie in Warner Brothers history and the third highest grossing movie of all time. And they could have easily done a cash grab. They could have easily done another possessed kid or Linda Blair gets repossessed or whatever. They could have done that and it would have been super straightforward and they probably would have made a lot of money. I mean, you've seen this like Jaws 2 kind of tried to do that,
I
French
was
Connection
literally about
2.
to say Jaws
Yeah,
2. I
even
like Jaws
Damien.
2.
Oh, I like to. You know what?
But
Jaws
it is
2 is
just Jaws again. It's a slasher movie with a
yeah,
shark.
yeah. No, Jaws
Yeah.
2 is like I was telling my fiance Craig because like he hasn't seen Jaws 2 and I was just like Jaws 2 is it's unfortunate that it's Jaws 2 because if it weren't
Yeah.
Jaws 2 it'd be a really good B plus thriller.
It'd
And
be
the
the second
problem
best shark movie.
yeah,
Pretty
it's
much.
because it's
Yeah.
really it's a good effective movie and it's creepy and it's very nasty. It's a very mean movie, that movie. But
Yeah, the
it's
girl
also
crying when the boyfriend
yeah.
dies. Yeah.
Oh my God. It's
Yeah.
brutal.
That's like
That's
I
a
think
brutal
that's as
movie.
good as anything in the first movie. Like
Yeah,
as
I
far as
mean,
one scene, you know.
but the first movie, it's like you're comparing it to the fucking Venus de Milo. You're comparing it to literally one of the best American movies ever
Yeah,
made
yeah.
and maybe one of the best movies ever made. And it's just like, what do you do with that? And I think that John Calley and John Boorman, as well, first John Calley at Warner Brothers, but then John Boorman when he was brought in, decided to just and this was before Jaws 2. This is even before really kind of before the French Connection 2 that was getting made and it was getting out there. But they just sidestepped the whole thing. And they were just like, you know what? We're not going to do that again. We're going to do something completely different and we're going to try to build this into something bigger and they still wanted to make an A-list movie. They still wanted to make a quality movie that was going to be nominated for Oscars like the first one and acclaimed and everything. And all of the pieces on paper were there. It made sense on paper. All of it made sense on paper. Um, but each one of these decisions, for reasons that I think you saw in the documentary, turned it into this other thing that nobody intended. And what they ended up doing was I think they forgot about, in a way, they forgot about the audience. They forgot about genre. And Boorman says toward the end of the film, you know, if it hadn't been, you know, bonded to The Exorcist, it would have had a very different reception. I think I mean, certainly it wouldn't have gotten made, certainly not with the biggest budget in Warner Brothers history and all that stuff. But I think he's right. I think if you saw Exorcist 2 and you knew nothing about The Exorcist somehow, and I think maybe that's possible like 50 years after the fact. Like maybe there are people who don't know The Exorcist.
There's some
If
kid who hasn't
yeah,
seen.
some kid somewhere.
Yeah.
If he just saw Exorcist 2, I wonder like I don't think that it would be taken certainly with such severity and nastiness, but I think it might be taken in a very different way. And I think that's the success of this movie. It's kind of you know, the audiences were mad because it was kind of a fake out because they were expecting a horror movie. And the thing is, Exorcist 2 is not a horror movie. And how can you make The Exorcist, you know, the sequel to The Exorcist not a horror movie? It's like, but they did. That's what they did. And that's one of the biggest reasons why it's one of the most fascinating films ever. It is like, that is such an insane creative swing. Like to just like, we're not only not going to do anything like the original, we're not even going to really be the same genre as the original. Like that's something else. That's like, wow, okay, you guys have yourself way out there on a limb. And you know, he kind of paid for it. Um, but that
But in a way,
doesn't,
you'd think that that was a smart idea, right? Because it's like you're not going to do
yeah.
The Exorcist better than The Exorcist, so you might as well do something different, right?
And they actually said that. They actually said in interviews, I think Rospo said this a couple of times and in print interviews, like, we can't top that. We're not going to try. We're going to do this other thing. We're going to expand on the story. We're going to talk about why she was possessed. We're going to give this greater meaning and bring it back to like human spiritual evolution. And in a way, it's funny because like even just like looking at The Exorcist is a naturalistic, despite it being supernatural, it's a naturalistic, very contained, character-driven story. It's a small story. It doesn't have a lot of people. It doesn't have a lot of locations. A lot of it takes place in one room, like 20% of the movie or something. I think I added it up at one point in my edit. I literally just took all of the shots in that room and just like okay, what's the runtime versus the runtime? I think it was like 20% of the movie takes place in that room, in her bedroom. Exorcist 2 is like, oh, we're on three continents and we're flying around and we have this like synchronizer thing, so we're literally in two different time places at the same time, and it's it's kind of a wonderful fever dream of a film. And once you get past the fact that, you know, you if you felt cheated that it wasn't a horror movie or you're angry, if you see it for what it is, it's kind of unbelievably cool. And technically, if you're a film nerd like me, certainly, it's crazy cool. It's like amazing. It's all of the technical stuff he did in that movie, like going basically eschewing opticals because opticals were still kind of rough at the time. It was rough to do an optical. Like you would get generation loss. You would like all the optical shots would look much more grainy. Doing all that stuff in camera, doing all those trick shots, all those miniatures, shooting the exteriors of Africa on interior sound stages to give it that kind of like, what is this? This isn't like, what world is this? This isn't like real exterior, but this isn't like real interior. What is this? But if you kind of go with that, and it's a big ask to go with that movie. That movie asks a lot for you to like get with it. But if you choose to kind of give yourself up to that movie, it's really something else. Like there's no other movie in the world like it. Like not
You
even
know,
close.
I was trying to think because there's so many sequels, you know, and I'm trying to think of
Oh,
a
it's
movie
nothing
that
like any of the
there isn't,
sequels.
you know, like it's not, I mean, it may be Halloween 3, but even that, like it's so
You,
different. Like it's,
Halloween 3 is a very interesting example, actually, and another movie that has like a cult following. I actually kind of like Halloween 3.
I love Halloween 3.
You know, it's like
It's not, you know,
I can't defend all of it, but like I do
the
like it. I
robot,
think
the girl turns into
yeah,
a
the robot
cyborg.
like that goes on forever. He's like, isn't there like
Yeah.
10 minutes where he's like her arm comes up and then he's like, oh, and
Yes.
this everything's okay, and then a minute later like her other arm comes up. It's just like okay, enough. Like yeah,
But the ending's
but
great. It's a great
oh,
ending.
it's a great ending. It's a great ending, and like and the whole thing with the Stonehenge blowing up in the lab and the snakes coming out of the mask. Oh, it's good. It's
The
really good.
kid, yeah.
Yeah, the kid
Kid
and that
dying.
dad
That's
and the
always good.
dad with his expression on his face. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, Halloween 3 and a lot of people have also brought up Joker 2, but I can't say anything about it because I haven't seen it. I have to
Oh,
watch it.
I saw it twice back to back.
And what's it like?
Um,
I hear I have to see it being that there are apparently
I,
similarities, but
I could
I
see
don't
where you draw similarities in
because it's
terms
a
of
genre.
how,
It's a messing of genre, right?
yes, and the fact that the first one did so well, and it
Yeah.
seems like they just gave him a ton of money to do
Oh yeah.
whatever he wanted, and he took
And
a
that
bunch
is
of money and
exactly
did
what
whatever he
happened.
wanted,
That's
and it got terrible
100% what
reviews on
happened.
release.
Yeah. You
I
know,
was not
I
for
feel
me when I saw it, but I have thought about it since, and I'm like,
I have
there's
to see
parts of it
it.
where I'm
Hold
like,
on. I'm gonna
you
write
know,
that down.
it is interesting. Like, and I think it is similar in a way of it's not what people wanted out of a sequel, which is kind of what my feeling was because I
A
liked the first Joker movie and I
a
wanted
ve-
that movie again, but it's
yeah,
not that.
a very prominent director, and I'm not gonna drop names. Maybe I should. Maybe Lulu, you can tell me if I should, but I probably shouldn't. Actually saw Boorman and the Devil and emailed me recently, which was like what I just got an email from this like huge director. Okay, wow. And he loved the film, which was really cool. But he literally said like you should watch Joker 2 because it's very similar. And I'm like, oh God, is it? I don't want to do another documentary on Joker 2 right now. Um, I'm still recovering from this one. This one took a very long time to do.
I was
We sh
gonna ask how long did it take from
with
when
our
you
first
had the
well
idea to then
oh, I
make it?
had the idea. Oh my God. Like, well, my friends have been on me, because I'm an editor and I have a lot of filmmaker friends and like, you know, whatever. My friends have been on me to do a documentary about this film forever. Literally on my 30th birthday, I showed a bunch of friends this movie on VHS, and like some of them have never forgiven me. The Exorcist too. Um, um, in 2017, my friend who's a documentary filmmaker, Jeffrey Schwartz, um, said to me like you need to make a he'd been saying you need to make a documentary on this, you need to make a documentary, you know, all of this stuff, like, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't want to make a documentary. Documentaries are a ridiculous amount of work and they take
This was your
forever.
first documentary, correct? Am I
It
or
is my
feature
first
length?
documentary.
Right.
I have edited on documentaries before, and I was like, during the making of this, I was on Queer for Fear, A History of Queer Horror, Brian Fuller's limited series, and I ended up, I was just an editor, but by the end, I was the lead editor and a co-executive producer, which was really cool. So I learned a lot from that as well. But yeah, this is the first documentary I've ever directed, and kind of originated and written and edited and stuff like that. Um, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so in 2017, basically Jeffrey told me, he said, if you don't make this documentary, no one will make this documentary, and these people will die, and no one will tell this story, and that'll be it. And that made me very upset. And because I knew he was right, and I kind of knew I had to do it, so I got in touch with Boorman because I figured there were two documentaries to be made for this movie. It was either with Boorman or without Boorman. And once Boorman said yes, and I was very nervous about that because this is a movie that Boorman has almost never talked about. There are literal retrospectives of Boorman's work that show near pardon me, nearly every movie he's ever made except
There's
The
one missing.
Heretic. Literally, literally, I think there was one at Film Forum a few years ago, and I think a couple at the end, but it's like no Heretic. That's it. Everything but The Heretic. And he just, I felt like this must be so painful for him. And I wrote this initial email, and we introduced ourselves, and that was lovely. And he wrote me back. I was so thrilled. And then I was like, look, I feel like this had to have been a baptism by fire for you because I had read the making of book and I knew that he'd gotten sick. I knew that like there were all sorts of things going on the set, and he was under all this pressure, and they were rushed to finish because they had the production schedule got pushed so radically into post production, and everything took longer and was more expensive, and it was just the snowball of horrific production stuff, um and the way that it was taken and the way that he was vilified, personally vilified. I mean, you know, the reviews, some of them are like, oh, it's a cash grab. And I'm just like, you know what? This is the opposite of a cash grab. A cash grab would have been easy. A cash grab would have been another possessed kid or whatever. This was like something completely different. And it really astounded me how almost none of the reviewers in 1977 this were overwhelmingly just snide and dismissive, like really did not give any credit to any of the amazing work in this film. I mean, it's one thing not to like it. It's another thing to be like, oh, you just, you know, it's a cash grab. You just did it for the money. I'm like, no, one is actually a critique, and one is, you know, you, the critic, being kind of a dirt bag.
Just being mean.
Um, yeah, at the
Like, because
time.
people do
Well,
a
I mean,
lot, you know.
yeah, and it's like, you know, I think I mean, there's certainly valid criticisms to make, but calling it a cash grab was not one of them. Like, it's the furthest thing from it. Um, and I told him, I said, it must have been very difficult. It must have been a baptism by fire. And I said, I really appreciate, and I think this is why he did it, why he agreed to do it. I said, I really appreciate your decision to shoot on sound stages because you know, it reminded me a lot of Black Narcissus. And I had no idea he was a Palin Pressburger fan. And I mean, I should have put that together. I guess he's British, and they're like, you know, icons of British cinema. They were like the best directing duo. Just their films were decades ahead of their time. Like Life of Colonel Blimp, The Red Shoes, Matter of Life and Death, astounding films, and Black Narcissus. And it was because of that he was just like, yes, I was inspired by that to like create these other, like he didn't he wanted to reject naturalism entirely, which is weird because the first movie was all about naturalism. Friedkin, French Connection, and Exorcist were two of the most naturalistic big budget movies you've ever seen. Um, so when he agreed to interview, that we finally interviewed in February of 2018. And that was the first interview. That was literally the first thing that I shot for this film. And it was, he gave me a day. He sat for me for an entire day. And I have this interview, and I have to release some of the stuff I didn't use because it's 2.5 hours of him, edited down, 2.5 hours of him, and the best stories you've just ever heard of this. I could have made a documentary simply out of his interview alone. And once I had that interview, I was like, okay, I have to see this all the way through now. And then I was lucky enough to get in touch with Linda Blair, who said yes. I got in touch with Roswell Pallenberg, who said yes. I got Louise Fletcher, who said yes. And those were the first four. And those were, certainly the biggest and most prominent ones. And I shot them all before the pandemic. And then the pandemic kind of blew a hole in our schedule. It was between that and the fact that I got on Queer for Fear, which took me out for like a couple of years or more. Um, and that's kind of why it took so long. Um, if it hadn't been for the pandemic, this would have been finished at least 2 or 3 years earlier. But I can't, I mean, I have to say the going over it, the cutting, this incredibly difficult process of cutting this thing and getting it exactly right, um, which took years. It took, as I think I said, it took 2 years between the initial rough assembly and the final cut. Um, Seeing the film now, it's everything I wanted it to be, and it flows really well, and audiences seem to really love it, and it's really enormously validating, like to be invited to Venice to the world premiere at the Venice Film Festival, and to get into Beyond Fest, which is really difficult as well, and to have this kind of response to the film. Yeah, I can't really wrap my head around it yet. It's kind of like I don't even know how to process the fact that Venice happened. Like, and of course,
What
when I went to Venice, I immediately came back and I immediately tested positive for COVID, like a day later,
oh,
which I got apparently on the plane because people were coughing, and
oh
Craig was
no.
like, Craig was just like, I hope one of them doesn't have COVID. I'm like, don't even say that. And of course, the next day, it was just like, oh, for
I think everyone got
Christ's
sick
sake.
after. I got sick after Venice.
Well, it's I would go to Sundance every year. I went to Sundance every year for a number of years. And it was great. It was very inspiring. It was lovely. I went with a bunch of film geek friends, and we would just see a bunch of movies, and we would all compare notes. And after every trip, every single trip, it was called the Sundance flu. Because the East Coast people and the West Coast people would all meet in Park City, and then we would all infect each other with whatever, and then we would all go back, and everybody would be sick for like a week. It was kind of a thing.
But
So
worth it, I'm sure.
I expect it was similar in Venice. So
Yeah. I did want to ask what was the submission process like for Venice? Like, how does that even
you
happen?
know what? The submission process was we submitted and we knew nobody in Venice, and I thought didn't have a chance in hell. There was nothing special about the submission. Literally, we just went on the site, we submitted, and that was it.
You just go
And
on the
and
website and just submit your movie?
That's it. That's
Oh,
literally,
that's
and
awesome.
we paid the ridiculous fee. Don't say it was ridiculous. The large
It would
fee.
have
It
been
was
ridiculous if you didn't get
it's
in.
well, I mean, it was the highest fee I've ever paid to get to submit to any festival anywhere. It's true. Um, but I mean, we knew, like, my producer Travis Stevens, he was one of the producers of Jodorowsky's Dune, and he's directed a number of other movies and all this stuff. So he knew film festival programmers at a bunch of festivals and stuff. And I knew, like, a bunch of programmers at, like, at a bunch of festivals as well, just from me running around and coming up through the ranks. But nobody knew anybody at Venice. And I thought for sure, I was like, there is no chance. Like that, this is like a blind submission to, like, an Ivy League school. Like I just, like, you have no, like, yeah, I think I have the grades, but here, who knows? And when we got that email, I was like, I cannot believe it. If you had told me, if you had listed like 50 festivals and told me which one I thought we would like get into like premiere at. Venice, I don't even know if I would have put Venice in the top like anything. I was a shock, and it was the delight. And again, it was insanely validating because we went in knowing nobody. My name is, yeah, nobody knows my name. And they just loved the film. They programmed it because they just loved the film. There was no, uh, yeah, it was, if anybody needs a story about like how, yeah, all you need is the film in a dream. It's like, yeah, you need a film in a dream and you need to submit. And that's literally all we did.
That's great to hear. Because I would always
Yeah.
assume that like you need to know somebody. You know what I mean?
I
Like you'd have
mean,
to have it in, which I'm sure
I've
helps.
heard, honestly, I've heard the same thing, and I would imagine it certainly helps, but we didn't have that getting into Venice. We had nothing. It just got watched, and then we were invited in. Like, we didn't even hear from the programmers. Like, we heard nothing. It was just
When
like we
did you
just
hear that you were in?
mid-July,
Okay.
and then because we were still finishing the film. I mean, we still had like, I don't know, 8 or 9 music cues and a bunch of graphics. Still, we were still in process. We were still doing it. Um, and the earliest we would have been done was the end of August, early September. So really, Venice would have been the first one we could have possibly shown at. And once we got in, it was literally me calling everyone, like my composer, my graphics team, like literally it was like 11 o'clock at night, so like they didn't pick up, but it's like, well, my composer picked up because he's a night owl, but everybody else was, I just left voicemails, was like, okay guys, we just got into the Venice Film Festival, so everybody who's been working like and being like, okay, we're just gonna get to this whenever, it's like, no, now we have a deadline and now everybody needs to work like, 7 days a week. We need to get this done. We need to get it done amazing. Um and yeah, I mean, it's I feel like I haven't stopped sprinting. Like even now, it's like I'm still like, we're making a new DCP for Beyond Fest because we have to, because like the other one had Italian subtitles in it and burned in, so we have to make a new DCP, and we had to tweak some of the credits because like there were people we left out because we were throwing them together for Venice. So um yeah, it's I'm looking forward to taking a couple of days off at some point. Probably after next week. I don't know where. I hope I can have like a couple of cocktails.
I did want to ask because I was so like I thought it was amazing how many people you had interviewed for this.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Is it really that many? I guess it is. It's like,
I thought it was crazy. I was like I couldn't like new people kept popping up and I was like how did he like track this random guy down? Like
oh, the
the guy
tracking.
who was at the
Yeah.
preview screening, how do you
Oh,
find that random
that
kid?
that was
Like
funny. Okay, so
who's an adult
that
now,
was,
obviously.
yeah, that's Chris Landers. That was through social media. So like there are Exorcist 2 groups on Facebook and stuff like that. And I'm on, because I'm a fan of cult movies. So I know a lot of people in the cult movie sphere and the horror movie sphere and like the genre and like all that stuff. So I'm in these groups. I never post, but sometimes I read them. And there was this one thing like, and there's another one, I think it's just like old newspaper advertisements. Like people literally go through and like scan or like grab old newspaper advertisements for movies from like the 70s or the 60s or the 80s or something, and then they just post it. And it's always cool to see those key arts, like starts today at the Ziegfeld, like, whatever, back in like 1972 or whatever. So I think somebody posted on there or on one of the genre sites Exorcist 2, and then somebody brought up, because this is a story that's known, that there was a test screening that went horribly awry. And Rospo thought it was in Brentwood. I learned that it was in Pasadena. I don't know what theater it was in Pasadena. I've always wanted to try to find it, but I can't. Chris doesn't remember. Um, but Chris posted at bottom, was like, "Oh yeah, I was at that test screening in Pasadena. That was a trip." And I was like, and I'm like immediately DMing him. I'm like, dude, like what? Hold on. Were you really at that previous screen? He was like, yeah, it was my friend that like stood up and like screamed at the executives. I'm like, okay. we have to talk. And I got his phone number and we like chatted. I'm like, look, I really need to shoot you for this documentary. I'm making a documentary on Exorcist 2, and I just need you to tell the story of like, I need you to tell like going in, walking in, I need you to tell me everything you saw and heard. And we did. We shot him, I think we shot him on the same day as we shot Victor Sue, who was the second AD. Who now Victor has like this enormous career. You can look him on the IMDb. It's like he's like a god of production. He's worked on everything for the last 50 years. He's amazing. But like and another thing, by the way, unrelated, but you can circle back. Everybody that I interviewed for this film remembered this shoot like it was yesterday. It was uncanny. It had such an impression on everybody. And this is 50 years ago. And these are people who have worked on like set like, so many
Hundreds of movies, you
movies
know.
and TV shows. Like Ron Vargas shot like half of Murder She Wrote, I think, or something. Like he's like it'd be like these people like and Victor Sue has worked on like so much. Melissa Scoff has had this enormous career in casting. Like but everybody remembered this movie. Like literally these details. Like it was yesterday. Like this was such a huge, impactful movie for all of these people. It was crazy, and everybody. And the thing that struck me was everybody was so like sincere about giving their all to make a great movie. Everybody, from the script supervisor to like everybody, like it was moving. And I think you can feel that in the film because it was moving that these people, I mean, they were young. It was some of their first big movies. But they really wanted to do something amazing and special. And it really gutted them when it was taken the way it was. Um, and I think that love, though, I don't think you see that a lot in documentaries about movies and stuff like that. There's just dozens and dozens of people who um give so much to everything they do. Like it would be easier for anybody to make money in almost any other profession than the movies. Like almost anybody, you could like get a business degree. You could like go, whatever. It's like making movies. You have to, yeah, there are ways to make a living. Certainly, like more then than now, unfortunately. Um, but these people loved what they were doing, and that includes Boorman. There was so much personal love that went into all this stuff. At any rate, going back to Chris Landers, yeah. So I DM'd him and met up with him, and he told that story, and it dovetailed with the Friedkin story. I don't know if he ever saw that Friedkin video, but the fact that they said almost the exact same things, I'm like, okay, that's I guess that happened.
Again, talking about the interviews. I'm sorry.
No,
Um,
go ahead.
like, what is the process like of getting all these people? Like, I'm sure as somebody who's a fan of horror movies, I would imagine it was cool talking to Joe Dante about
Oh
Exorcist
yeah,
2 for however long you talked to
I
him.
was trying
How
to
did
get
that
Joe Dante
even
for a while
happen?
actually. Oh well, I mean Joe Dante.
Is it just a matter of sending emails?
Yeah, actually, kind of. It's a matter of, well, it's not just a matter of sending emails. It's like a matter of persistence. And it's a matter of like not being annoying, but being persistent. With regard to Joe Dante, who was so wonderful, I finally got through to him from his friend, who's a producer, John Davidson, who's produced tons of movies, I think, and like Airplane. He produced Airplane. I mean, he's like a legend. And John knew my friend Ed Herrera, who's a DP who actually lives in the same building as I do, and shot So Ed knew about the documentary. Ed told John Davidson. John Davidson flipped out. Is like, doesn't he know that Joe Dante actually loves Exorcist 2? And I'm like, yeah, I've been trying to get in touch with him, but I can't get to him. John got to him. Joe wrote me, and that's how that happened. Mike Flanagan, I got because Brian Fuller, and Brian Fuller is a good friend of mine, and I worked with him for like 2+ years, almost 3 years on Queer for Fear. I was like basically he directed the episode and I edited with him. So I was literally in a room with Brian Fuller for months and months and months getting that thing to to be great. And Brian had seen an early cut and was like, giving me some notes about like, cut this, move this, blah blah blah. And um so that's how, because Brian was friends with Mike Flanagan, that's how that happened. As far as everybody else, it was literally just internet sleuthing. I found Bonnie, the script supervisor. I don't remember how. It was from some listing somewhere because she had changed her name. Her last name was not Prendergast anymore, but it is in the film. Um, Victor Sue, I think the same way. Ron Vargas, I think the same way. I think it was literally just, and I talked to other crew members who we didn't end up shooting for various reasons. Gary Lydiard, who's I think the makeup guy, he lives in Provo. We simply just couldn't get out there. There's a second AC named Leslie Hill, who was one of the first women in the ASC. And you can see her briefly in I think a photograph. She lives in North Carolina. I didn't have the budget to fly to North Carolina. One of the camera operators, Nick McLean, we didn't end up shooting, but he's in Malibu. He ended up going from camera operator to DP, and he shot movies like The Goonies. Um, so who else? Garrett Brown, actually, I know through other DP friends of mine because he's a legend. Everybody knows Garrett. He's amazing. Um, I don't know. It literally it's it's time, it's persistence, it's calls, it's uh and honestly, like, not to toot my own horn, but it's like it's also about knowing the facts, knowing your shit. It's like I knew this story and I knew kind of what happened and how it kind of came about. And when I would talk to these people, I think it was evident that I wasn't just interested in making some stupid movie about like, oh, they call it the worst movie ever or whatever. Um, they they knew what I was trying to do. They knew I was trying to kind of honor the the ambition and the sincerity of what went into it, while at the same time telling the story of like, this is the beginning of the end of the Hollywood New Wave, and you're seeing it in real time. This was one of the first to fall. The first really big auteur, driven movies, before the studios were just like, okay, we're not giving anybody this kind of freedom anymore. And that really happened after Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, and I mean, I was gonna say, yeah, Heaven's Gate, that was it. And they're like,
Well, I
I
mean,
think
it's
that was the
because it
nail in the
killed the
coffin. I
studio.
mean,
It literally killed the
yeah,
studio. I mean, it's
yeah.
like you can
United
have
Artists,
flops.
right?
Yeah, United Artists. Like you
Yeah,
can have flops, but like United Artists literally lost, I believe, all of its executives because of Heaven's Gate. I mean, it went on as United Artists, but it wasn't the same United Artists because all of the people who made it United Artists were gone. And I think I don't know for sure, and you can check this. I think they went and founded Orion. I think that's what they did. I wish I remembered. It's been a while since there's a book. Hold on. Hold on. This is a great book if you've ever read it.
okay. I
Final
have
Cut, The
not, but
Making
I
of Heaven's
should.
Gate. It's so good. And it tells the story from a UA executive's perspective about the making of Heaven's Gate. And honestly, if I had like $200 million or whatever the hell it would cost to make that, that is a great story. That's a crazy story. But I don't think you can make, I mean, certainly you can't do it as a documentary because everybody involved really is kind of passed on. Chimino is passed on
Yeah,
and all that stuff. But um, the way that thing came together and Heaven's Gate in general, like if you watch it, have you seen it?
yeah.
It's I don't
It
want to dismiss it. It's not a dismissible movie because it's certainly like an experience. I don't think it really works, but
no,
but
and
I think that like I think there's kind of a really good movie in there. I know Steven Soderbergh recut it on his
really.
site just as an experiment. And I haven't watched that, but uh I always get the sense that like I'm watching like kind of a rough assembly that needed to be like, what is it, like three and a half
That's
hours? And I'm just like, this should have
yeah,
been like
and it's all
two and a
like sepia
two and a
tone for some
half.
reason. I don't
But
know
they
what
took
was.
that out on the Criterion when
Okay,
Criterion redid it. They took out all of that stuff because Vilmos
okay,
had passed on And Cimino's like, and so the new cut, the new director's approved cut on Criterion, everything is gorgeous and green and lush, and it does help. It helps
Okay.
a lot because it's like because the early sepia tone, desaturated, like low contrast, kind of like old photograph look. It was just it was hard to watch. It was just ugly. It just after a while, I think Roger Ebert called it one of the ugliest movies he'd
Yes.
ever seen. And it's like, and it was
Yeah.
all intentional, but it was like, you know,
I don't know if you've seen Empire of Dreams, which is the documentary about
oh, is that the Les Blanc
the
thing with about
it's
Fitzcarraldo? Oh, no, that's
no,
Burden of Dreams.
it's about the original Star Wars trilogy, the making of. And
Oh no.
I
Oh,
think
oh,
it
oh,
came
oh,
out.
oh. Is that the Ryan? Did Ryan Johnson have something to do with that?
I don't think this was from the DVD release.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh,
So
he's
yeah,
a
like
talking head in
20
it, I
years ago
think.
or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've heard of it. It's like 2.5 hours long. Yeah, I haven't
yes.
watched it. Yeah.
Okay. It's like one of my favorite movies, maybe. And I was just gonna say
Really? I
this
have to.
reminded me of that
Oh, that's cool. Well,
in terms of
look.
everyone you got to interview, the pacing of it is
Oh my
fantastic.
God, that's cool.
And it's
Did you
just
ever see the behind the scenes on The Abyss? It's called
no,
Under
I haven't.
Pressure. That was on the laser disc, and I think they
I don't
ported it
love the
onto the
Abyss.
DVD.
I don't
But
mind it. I don't love
it's a
it.
great documentary. If you can find, I think it might be on YouTube. It's called
Okay.
Under Pressure: The Making of the Abyss. I think it's only an hour, or it could be even like 45 minutes. I don't remember, but it's like that movie. Like you're watching that and like holy shit! Like every moment is like, oh my God, what? Oh, and she almost drowned. What?
Yeah, I
It's
was
like,
gonna say,
oh
was it
yeah,
all
and
like
then and
actually underwater?
yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah.
they had a tarp. They did it in a nuclear reactor that was never activated. It was abandoned, so it was this cavernous thing, and they got this tarp because they wanted to shoot during the day, and then at some point the tarp ripped open, so they had to shoot everything at night. It just looked like so like that documentary was just like, oh my God, I'm so glad I was not on this set. It's like it looked like such a horrible experience. Um, but you know that's one of my favorite making of like that's not like kind of Hearts of Darkness or one of the true greats. I mean, like when I made Boorman and the Devil, honestly, what I was telling people, I'm just like, I want to make something that is up there with Hearts of Darkness, like, and which is really like arrogant, I'm sure,
I
but it's
like this
like,
more, if that
oh, thank you, that's very sweet,
yeah.
I'll take it.
Not to say anything bad about Hearts of Darkness. I just mean
No, that's Hearts
yeah.
of Darkness is an astonishing film. But I was like, if I can't, I don't want this to be a making of movie because it's not a making of movie. And especially after I interviewed Boorman, I realized it wasn't a making of movie. And this is a movie about making movies and a moment in time where you could make personal visions, actual art for art's sake in an enormous budget with an enormous canvas because audiences at that time in this country especially were hungry for something different and something interesting. Um, and I don't know what we need to do as a culture to get there again. I think that it was very kind of like once in a lifetime thing simply because people had never seen movies in America like the movies of the Hollywood New Wave because, and I'm talking about broadly. I'm not talking about the people in the cities who could see the 400 Blows or who could see Breathless or who could see the Seven Samurai or any of the movies or Bergman or any of that stuff, any of the movies that inspired the Hollywood New Wave, which inspired these directors. But these were movies with big American stars in English from big American studios, which were suddenly telling stories in these really different much more challenging ways and much more challenging stories and much more challenging subject matter because the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association of America, had just started in 1968 with a rating system. And once you had a rating system, suddenly creators could put almost whatever they wanted in movies. Um, because you had that cover. The production code from the 30s had finally collapsed. Nobody had to be afraid of what some censor in some state was going to think of it because you had your rating. And suddenly, that and the fact that the Hollywood New Wave happened and like movies like Bonnie and Clyde, it just blew the doors open. And suddenly big studios, especially Warner Brothers was one of the biggest with John Calley and Ted Ashley, were trusting directors with their visions. I mean, you look at the output from Warner Brothers during this time, and it's absolutely unbelievable. I mean, they had their their memes. They had their movies that maybe like weren't as good, but they also had Clockwork Orange, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, What's Up, Doc, Clute, All the President's Men. I mean, this is just off the top of my
Clute's an
head.
awesome movie. No one talks about that
Performance.
movie.
Yeah, does anybody talk about Performance? That's a fantastic film. They put money into Woodstock, which was a big hit, and a documentary the likes of which no one has ever seen, and probably still. Um, you know, even movies like Dirty Harry, which is kind of like I think Pauline Kael called it a fascist movie, and it kind of is, but it was also a thriller like the likes of which we'd never seen before. Um, these were movies that were greenlit by these people with actual money, with actual studio money that I think are some of the best American movies ever made. And they changed the way movies were made. They changed the way American audiences viewed movies. And I think that that hunger is still there in audiences, although I think studios are now just interested in like, making lots of money with fewer movies. I really hope that maybe some enterprising people can understand that there's a lot of money to be made for just letting directors do really good work on mid budgets and releasing a bunch of those. And you're seeing it with like the A24s and the neons especially. Um, and I hope there's more of that because I think there's a huge hunger for individual and personal movies. Um, you know, like a Nora, like The Brutalist, like a lot of movies that, I want those movies. I want movies like that to be financed by arms of the studios with actual money, with actual budgets. And I don't think they're going to lose their shirt on it. I think if they try that and actually stick with it for 5 or 6 years, they're going to have an enormous, enormous success. But, it takes vision and guts to see that. And you know, I think right now that's in with the exception of a couple of places, actually Warner Brothers being one of them. Um, we need more of it. There's not a lot of it to go around. And I wish there were because cinema is too important as an art form.
Yeah, man. I think I think my favorite thing about the because you mentioned how it's not really a making of documentary, and I think that
Yeah.
was you don't really realize that until the movie's kind of coming to an end, and
Yeah.
it's all kind of reframed in this different way where you're like, this is more about Boorman and his career and how this movie
Yeah.
almost kind of exemplifies not just a turning point in his career, but in
In
movies in
cinema.
general.
Yeah, in
Um,
American cinema, certainly. And it's funny because like when we were cutting it and recutting and recutting it, and I mean um, I mean, there were a lot of I would get notes about like why are we spending the first 20 minutes with movies that aren't The Exorcist? Why do we care about Borman for the first 20 minutes? And I would get notes like, why do we need to know about like, whatever. I sound bitter. But I got into Venice, so whatever. They
yeah,
can
it worked out okay.
yeah, it worked out okay. I'm glad I stuck with my guns because it was always a movie about an artist making something stretching even beyond his own the capabilities he thought he had to make something really really amazing and huge and sincere and thought-provoking, and so much thought and careful attention and love was put into this, and it imploded in the most horrific way, in the most horrific way any movie can, I think. Like I can't think of a worse reception to a movie. I'm sure there have been. Um,
The
but
reception, I
on
think, is better known than the movie.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
and it was
Like
because it was so like I tell people like yeah, and they were recutting it while it was in wide release, and they're just like they were
that was
what?
insane when I
And
heard
I'm
about
like
that.
they were recutting it while it was in wide release. You would go see it on like a Friday, and then by the following like Wednesday, it would have the different ending or a different beginning or whatever. And it was like it's you know, somebody called it a cautionary tale. I think it's not a cautionary tale. I think it's about the necessity for taking risks. I think Boorman had to make that film. And I think he had to go through this because I think if he hadn't, we wouldn't have Excalibur. We wouldn't have the Emerald Forest. Like, or if we did, they wouldn't be as good, honestly. He took so many lessons and techniques from The Heretic into his subsequent work. He learned from this perceived failure. He learned so much. He learned about the audience, he learned about filmmaking, he learned about himself. And I think there's nothing more profound one can say about any artist doing any work. If there's anything I wanted to do with this movie, like the real impetus for me making it was I wanted to make artists know that failure isn't the worst thing in the world. You have to court failure. You have to push yourself to that point where it could absolutely just fall apart and fail. And certainly I'm living proof because it took 7 years for me to make this movie. And I had long since accepted that, like, you know what? This could just play a couple of festivals maybe, and then just kind of like, you know, eke out there on some, somewhere like some DVD or some the desert of Amazon Prime somewhere in the back,
Tubi.
yeah, or whatever. Like nobody, or Tubi. Actually, people watch Tubi, but it's just like it's very
I like
possible
Tubi,
that.
actually.
Oh, I know, I love Tubi. I
Yeah,
love
it's
Tubi.
great.
Don't get
I've
me
watched
wrong.
more movies there than anywhere else, to be honest.
It's really cool. They have a lot of really good stuff, but it's like I really wanted filmmakers, especially, to be inspired by this, to be like, you know what, Boorman survived that. I can survive this. I'm going to do this thing that's important to me. I'm going to do this thing that pushes the boundaries and that challenges the audience. I'm an audience member that wants to be challenged. That's more important to me than a movie being good. I want a filmmaker to bring to that film something interesting and different and personal. And I want to come out thinking about it, even if it doesn't succeed on every single level and every single point. Like I will give a movie enormous amount of leeway if it's doing something different and interesting, and certainly something I've never seen before and personal. And I think I would love to reorient so many people working or trying to work in this business into that mindset, because I think if that happened, if we just made more movies that were like that, we would see a very different cinema landscape now. And I think a much more successful one.
Awesome. Dude, thank you so much for
Thank
doing
you. And
this.
thank
It was a
you.
lot of fun. I do have one last question. I know we're kind of
Okay, go
over
for
time,
it. No,
well
it's
over
fine.
time,
No,
but
it's
I
fine.
did
Let's
want to
go
ask, and
on.
I think I know the answer to this, but do you think Exorcist 2 is a good movie?
I'm going to be really annoying and basically go back to say, like, Exorcist 2 doesn't work the way that it thinks it does. Exorcist 2 was designed to have an effect on an audience in a certain way, and I don't think it succeeds on that level. But Exorcist 2 is one of the most fascinating and interesting movies I have ever seen. And I think for anybody who loves cinema or anybody who respects cinema, Exorcist 2 is one of the most must see movies I can think of, especially if you're interested in learning about American movies of the 70s. I think it's a genuinely important movie to watch and understand, because I think that what it was trying to do and what happened to it kind of encapsulates what happened to American cinema. And I think there's something to be learned from that. And I think there's also, like, even right now in 2025, I think there's a path that this movie can teach us. Like, even though that movie was not a success, but I think it can, I think the fact that it exists and the fact that we were doing things like that, I think we absolutely need to get back to that. I think studios need to get back to taking risks on projects that are more challenging to sell and more challenging to get out there. And I think that, if they did that, they would have success beyond the likes of which they even understand.
Awesome, man. Dude, I could talk about movies with you for like
Yeah,
hours,
I
but I
could.
love your
You know,
route.
I could talk about movies forever, but I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you. I'm gonna go to the
Awesome. And
gym now and
it's
try to get back into my routine.
you said it's premiering next week in North America, right?
It premieres on September 24th at Beyond Fest, and then it's at the Brooklyn Horror Fest in New York on I think October 22nd. And those I
Awesome.
believe are the next two. And I think there are
It's a
other
great time of year too.
yeah, and I think there are other I think there are other festivals it's up for, but I don't know who's announced and who hasn't, so I can't say. But yeah, those are the two I know of that I can talk about.
Awesome. Awesome, dude.
All
I had a
right.
lot of fun with this
Thank
and
you.
I
Me too.
really did love the movie. I think I mentioned right after I saw it, I think I saw nearly 30 movies
Oh my
at the
God.
Venice Film Festival, and this was by far my favorite.
Oh,
So
thank you. That means
yes.
that honestly means a lot to me. I just felt
It was
like
my favorite
everybody
movie I
in
saw this year, actually.
Oh my
So
God, thank you. I'll
yes.
take it. I mean, it's like I feel like everybody, it was on the second to last day of the festival, and I feel like everybody going, I'm just like, everybody in this room has seen like 15 movies in the last like 5 days, and
At
everybody's
least.
just like,
Yeah.
oh my God. And I could feel it in the first like third. I'm just like, people aren't really laughing, but it's like everyone's tired. But by the midpoint, everybody was with it, and I felt a lot better. I was like, oh my God, are the jokes not landing? I'm like, no, it's like the day before the last day of the festival, so that's why. Um, but yeah, no, it's I'm expecting, from what I understand, a raucous audience reaction at Beyond Fest next week. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll fill my heart for a very long time, I hope.
Awesome.
Anyway,
That's great,
Shane, it
dude.
was
Thank you
great
so
meeting
much.
you. I'll talk to you
Yes, I'm
later.
gonna watch Exorcist 2 tonight and
Oh,
let you
enjoy
know.
and email me. Let me know what you think.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, bye.